new, is this the new one? Oh, this is not the new one. Here's the new patrons. So we got a new guy, David Adams. Thank you, David. Different David. A lot of Davids in this line of work. All right. Let's see. Let's talk weird diecast. All right, in 3, 2.
You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to Diecast Breakdown. I'm so glad you're here, and I am so glad we've got a returning guest. Alex Winson, aka Alex the Hoarder, will be talking to us about some really cool, really obscure diecasts. But before we get to that, I want to make sure I thank our executive level patrons, executive producer level patrons. That's better. That'll make the show go. And if you want to know how you can join their ranks, you can visit diecastbreakdown.com. These are the people that give us the most. There are people that give us a little. There are some that give a lot. And there are some that gave all. Anyway.
I didn't know about that.
We lost a lot of good people in the diecast wars.
It's a tough life.
Yes. But these people we have not lost. And in fact, hopefully we haven't lost them with this kind of intro. But we will like to thank First and 64th Customs, Dane Self, DrivenDreams.org, Jason, Mr. Big Lou, Mad Visions, Mike's Mods and Customs. You get one more bonus one, Mike. I'm giving it to you. Reviews Through Another Lens, Twice Diecast, thank you, David, and Video Geek Productions. Special shout out to our new production assistant level patron, David Adams, who has joined us at a $3 a month level. And again, if you want to know how to join their ranks, visit diecastbreakdown.com. And we know that you spend all your money on diecasts, and you probably barely have enough to cover your rent at the end of the month. But if you can't help us financially, you can always just like, subscribe, and share the episode. I'm going to ask for that at the beginning of the episode for a change instead of for the 3 people that make it to the end, and see if that makes a difference. I'm told it does. And speaking of making the difference, the big difference maker on this team, my friend, my colleague, your ear to the wall when it comes to diecast news, Mr. David Johns is joining me, as he often does. David, how are you today?
That might be the most flattering introduction I've ever received in my
Well, just wait
life.
till next episode. I'll take it up another notch.
All right.
Well, David, we are revisited by a true expert, someone who is actually a published and professional author, blogger, diecast aficionado, enthusiast, expert even. And he's going to be telling us about some really cool stuff. You have seen his work on Lamley Group. You've seen him on YouTube. You've seen him on Instagram. And now you're seeing him on Diecast Collector Magazine. Alex Winson, a.k.a. Alex the Hoarder on Instagram and YouTube. Alex, thank you again so much for being on the show with us.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are excited. I love our guests from across the pond. We get a really nice, unique perspective from y'all. It feels like England is closer to the diecast action in a lot of ways. You've got that nice thing of being like between the US and Asia where you've everything kind of comes together in Europe. I feel like Europe's got you got the big, the big shops and the big shows, and a lot of diecast history, true history, comes from the UK area. So I appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. So before we get to that, let's talk a bit about what you've been up to since the last time you were on, because as I mentioned earlier, you've got a new gig that you're writing at.
That's a bit of a real pinch yourself moment. So after I went to Majorette in April this year for their influencer event, I reached out to Diecast Collector through a fellow Lamley writer of mine, Graham Heaps, and I spoke to the Diecast Collector team and, put forward an article covering the influencer event, and they seemed really interested. Managed to get it published by some minor miracle, and by an even more impressive miracle, I think they wanted a few more stories from me. So lo and behold, I just carried on writing. So I think I'm up to 3 or 4 now. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that. I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome. And I'm realizing I'm the only person on this interview that I think is not a published diecast author. Because, hey,
Right.
people, if you haven't noticed, go over to Cast Heads Magazine, check out that hot article by the upstart young buck cub reporter David Johns over there.
Reporter. There you go.
That's the word I was looking for.
That was fun. But hey, listen, we'd be remiss if we didn't point out we do have one certified customizer prize winner on our panel today, and
That's
that would
true.
be Chuck. So don't overlook that.
Well,
Chuck built them,
Alex could
and-
have won some awards. I don't know what Alex does in his free time. Actually, I know exactly what Alex does in his free time. That's the problem.
Hey-o.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and I've been in Diecast Heroes magazine. They've published the things that I wrote about the cars I customized. So I
There you
guess
go.
there's that. But and I do have a Diecast media network that I help run. But that's a whole other thing. So anyway, we're not here to talk about us. We're here to talk about Alex. Alex, before we did this show, we had this idea. David had this idea, I think, and it's a really interesting one because you can't throw a rock in a diecast collector's room without hitting an R34 or a Datsun 510 or a VW Beetle or a Porsche 911. But there are some truly obscure cars that you might even scratch your head and go, who greenlit this? Why is this here? Is it because someone's mom had one? What's the deal? So I'm
My mum
excited
never
about
had a PT Cruiser, I've got to say.
everybody's mom over here did. Not quite. I just found out recently that PT Cruisers are huge in Japan. I did not realize that that's a thing over there. They
I think
are
this was a
shipping
gift
them
from
over
Chuck.
in droves now.
Wasn't this a gift from you, Chuck? And I'm not going to hog the spotlight here, but that was my first car.
Yeah,
that
I
came
think
to
so.
mind.
Was that the
right.
Rams one? Sorry, I was looking at something else.
I don't know. It's a beautiful cabriolet version.
Oh yeah. Yes, I did give you that one. I definitely gave you the Kurt Warner PT Cruiser. That was fun.
We'll be back with more Diecast Breakdown after this word from our sponsors. Legendary Hollywood concept artist and designer Fireball Tim Lawrence has created 3 exclusive pieces of automotive art based on the 3 hosts of Diecast Breakdown. Get these and other brilliant designs printed on mugs and more at fireballtimgarage.art today.
Cast Heads Magazine is a digital publication dedicated to enhancing the lives of collectors all across the world by providing information on new models, reviews on brands and diecast accessories like figures and dioramas, throwing light on customizers, photographers and people who contribute to making the diecast world vibrant. Subscribe to Cast Heads for free and look for collaborations with Diecast Media Network at castheadsmagazine.com.
And now back to Diecast Breakdown.
There are some bizarre diecasts out there, and we gave you the impossible task of limiting it to just 10 because we've realized that we talk a lot about tiny cars, and if we make the list any longer, this episode will be 3 hours long. So, Alex, talk a bit about your process when it came to picking this first round of 10 cars.
I think at first there was no real process. When David mentioned it, it was a kind of immediately the floodgates opened in my head, and I could picture probably about 100 diecasts. There was a few that stood out to me right away, and I went away that evening and jotted a few down on a note on my phone and thought, yeah, I'll go with those. And then I was at work the next day thinking over it in my head, and more were coming. So I thought, rather than just keep going over this, I'll stick with the original few that I got and go up in the attic, look through a few boxes, look through a few boxes and look through a few cupboards, see what I can find in the house. In this household, if you throw a stone, you'll hit an R34, you'll hit a 911, you might hit a 510, but you might hit something, made in a Soviet factory in Belarus, or you might hit something made in Greece. There's always going to be something. So luckily a few of them were to hand. So I kind of just went for what was easiest to grab as well. That was another bit of the process.
Awesome. Well, I have no idea what you've picked. I don't know if David does either, but I'm loving that I'm going into this completely blind. So let's take it away with vehicle number 1.
Yeah,
Even better is I know the list and I don't know these cars. We're in for a treat.
I'm going to go with one that's actually not even in it's not even in mint condition at the moment. I'm going to go with that first. Now, this is in real life. It's a car called an IAVA Berlinetta, and they were made by a company in Argentina called IAVA, which are like I think that the Argentine equivalent of a Bath, really, the Fiat tuners. They licensed built Fiats, I think, as well as making like knockdown performance kits that they imported from Italy. Stuck them on all the South American market Fiats, Argentine cars, etc. And I think at some point in the 1970s decided that they would try and make their own sports car on the base of a Fiat 128. Now, I think they enlarged the engine a bit, gave it a fifth gear. They built two of them, and they went into obscurity. No one knows where they've ended up. I think one ended up resurfacing recently somewhere in Buenos Aires, looking in a very sorry condition. But somebody at the Galgo toy company in Argentina saw that car and thought that would make a great diecast. So they ran it in this sort of rough 1/64 scale, ran it in 143 as well. And it was sold as, it wasn't actually marketed as an IAVA Berlinetta. It was marketed as a Lancia and a Ferrari. You can vaguely see on this one, there's a bit of an Alitalia colorway at the bottom there.
Sure.
And the reason why this is in the condition it's in is because it was ruined when I got it. So I've taken it to pieces, stripped it down. It will get rebuilt very slowly. But yeah, I'd two vehicles in real life, but yet someone seized upon this and thought, yeah, I'll go for that. And that casting, I think, lasted until the late 80s, early 90s. They even cut the back off it and put a little winch and a crane in the back and used it as a tow truck in both scales as well. They added rally light pods like this version has, although there are versions without it. But I think as obscure goes, that's got to be one of the best I've got, to be honest. That will resurface at some point. It will not always look like that.
Cool.
IAVA and the diecast.
I often wonder with stuff like that, is it just because the licensing was really cheap for that vehicle, or it was somebody? I guess the real answer is probably that somebody who was in charge of the company really liked that car.
Yeah. I did find some contemporary press reports of there's not much information about the real car, let alone the diecast. And when I was putting together a bit of, I don't profess to know a lot about cars really. So I do a little bit of research every now and then. I love to do research about them. So I was researching this just before I bought it and just before I came on here as well earlier this evening. And there's not that much about the real car itself, but there was a few press reports, newspapers and stuff. So I can only imagine that someone, it caught their eye. They thought, yeah, brilliant, we'll make that. And licensing, I don't know if it could even be an issue. It's just a completely unique vehicle.
So do you learn about that car first, or do you see a diecast and you're like, I don't know that car. Let me get that. What's the story on that one?
On this one particularly, I saw the diecast first. I saw the diecast version of this car, I think maybe last year or the year before. We've discussed BR Classics on my last visit here on the podcast, and through that kind of discovering them opened up a wormhole of going through all these South American market cars, and I discovered Galgo and Booby of Argentina and a few of the Brazilian toy manufacturers, and just scrolling randomly on Google, I saw this car that it was in, quite fully enough, Alitalia colours like this, and I thought, that does not look like a Lancia or a Ferrari. It looks a bit like one, but it's not exactly what it is. And then I have a friend in Argentina, and I reached out to him and said, have you any idea what this car really is? Does it exist? And he said, yeah, it's an IAVA, it's a Berlinetta. There were two of them, and that was about all he could tell me. So it sent me down a rabbit hole again.
Love it. Awesome. Yep. All right. We're coming out strong with number 10. What do we got for number 9?
That's a good question. I'm going to go for, I think, I've got them all next to me, so it's just picking it.
I should say in no particular order, by the way, folks.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with this next. So this is a Lotus Type 40, although it doesn't say that on the base, but I'll get to that in a minute. This is a Lotus Type 40 made by a then West German company called Gamma. I think Gamma, they're more famous for producing trucks and kind of dealer specials in 143 scale, but they had a line in the I think it would be late 60s, early 70s, called the Minette line. And it was the smaller 163, 166 scale cars. There was a Beetle. There was this. I think there was a Porsche 906. There was a couple of others, NSU R080. But this car, it's strange to me that it exists as a die car because it wasn't even a very successful race car. Not many people know about it. The Type 30 was the predecessor of this car. Basically, Lotus, in a bid to kind of be very, very successful at sports car racing, they took quite a weak chassis. It wasn't weak in the Elan when it had a very tiny engine in it, but they took a big American Ford engine, stuck it in the back, reversed the chassis, stuck a big American Ford engine in the back, and tried taking it to sports car racing, and it wasn't very successful. Blighted by structural failures, reliability issues, all sorts of things. So when they brought out the Type 40, which is what this car is supposed to be, they thought, okay, we'll put an even bigger engine in it, make the wheels a little bit bigger, vent the discs maybe, some improvements, but they gave it to Richie Ginther, the American racing driver. I think it was him that said that he was asked what he thought about the Type 40, and he said it's just the same as the 30, but with 10 more mistakes. It was not even a very successful race car at all. It didn't do very well, but yet somebody at Gamma in West Germany decided to, replicate it. But what they've done, on the bottom, it says it's a Ford GT40. Now, I have no idea why. I don't know if it was a misidentification. I know that they use Ford engines. I think maybe the same engine that the GT40 used. But yeah, it's a misidentified Lotus, and I could never get to the bottom of why that thing existed, really. But it's one of my favourite diecasts of all time. I wrote a Lamley article about it a couple of years ago, and yeah, researching that car and the disastrous sort of Type 30 before it and how much the drivers disliked it, and yeah, it was really interesting for me. Really interesting.
Gamma. Gamma or Gama?
Gama, Gamma. Yeah. And that's from the Minette line. They also it's just come to me now, a Matra Le Mans car, one of the closed top V12 cars, which I also covered on Lamley. But yeah, that's a really unique thing. It's a disastrous race car, but yet someone decided,
Yeah,
great.
Yeah. Gotta have it. That's two brands that I've never heard of, and I'd like to think that I dabble in more brands than most. So
Don't touch that dial. Diecast Breakdown will be right back after these messages. Diecast Breakdown is produced in partnership with Twice Diecast and Driven Dreams Org on YouTube. Check out their channels in the video description and subscribe for more epic diecast content.
Hey, this is Larry Wood.
This is Derek from Honest Diecast.
Hey, this is Chad Reed from Round 2.
This is Mike from Gaslands.
The SRT Joe Vita Show.
This is Champion DJ K.
This is Mad Vision here.
This is Diecast Dude.
And you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now, the thrilling conclusion of this week's episode of Diecast Breakdown.
I'm loving the episode. Keep on trucking, man.
All right, on to the next one.
We'll do this tiny thing.
Look at it.
You might even be able to see that. Now,
Homer Simpson's car.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was going to say it looks like Columbo's car.
I don't know a great deal about the company that made this car, the diecast company. I think it was a company called Midget Cars out of France, and it's a French-made Vespa 400 microcar. So the same Vespa that made the scooters. They also produced a two-stroke car, a microcar that was built in France, not Italy. Probably more successful in France than it was in Italy. And this car I found completely by accident on eBay. I bought it thinking it's going to be tiny sort of 1/87 scale thing. And when I actually measured it very roughly, it turns out that it's probably very close, if not bang on, 1/64, perhaps 1/66. But it's a very crude little thing, but probably one of the most unique things that is in my collection. It's quite weighty, solid metal. It's even got a roll top roof, a little basic interior. Yeah, but it's tiny little wheels, and it just about manages to roll. Just about manages. Yeah,
Does that remind you of some of the original Matchbox?
Yeah, very much so. In the construction of it, definitely. It's probably a little bit more crude, I'd say. The base on it's a little bit more, there's no markings on it. It's kind of just a pressed piece of metal. And it's very roughly kind of pinned onto the body, but it's very crude. You won't be able to see the panel line details on it and stuff, but it's really crude. But it does remind me of the original, the very first Matchbox. It's definitely the wheels and just the construction of it. Paint's very thick on it as well. It's just a
and we don't
wonderful
know
little thing.
We don't know who the maker of that one is.
So I think that was Midget Cars of France. I think that's
Midget.
the only thing that the original advert said it was a Midget Cars toy, and I don't know who they belong to, if they were a standalone company. I've seen, I think, a Citroen DS and a Jaguar D-Type, which were belong to that line or that company somewhere on eBay, but I've never come across one of their models when I've been at auctions or shows or anything. That's the first Vespa 400 I've seen in this scale, definitely.
But yeah, I didn't even know Vespa made microcars, but that's a really interesting find there. And again, not even being able to be sure what the maker is. So cool. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. What do we got?
This might be a brand that a few of the listeners might be familiar with. The toy brand, anyway. This is from Play Art. This is a DAF 33 made by Play Art, and I think it's probably the only DAF that exists in that scale. I suppose it wouldn't be too obscure for European collectors when it was on sale, because DAF 33s were quite a popular car on the continent. But it's I think Play Art were from Hong Kong, so it strikes me as being, again, kind of a who signed off on it. Why was it something that they decided to replicate in diecast? But I'm glad they did. I think it's quite a rare Play Art. The prices on them are quite high on the second-hand market. It seems to be something that's quite sought after. And I managed to find this, I think, again on eBay at some point. It's rough, it's ready. There's not much paint left on it, but it's a fantastic thing. And, the DAF 33 itself, an interesting car in real life. So
yeah,
it's a very interesting diecast to me. That very interesting.
Yeah. Now I think we had Christian Braun from Hobby DB was on, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, David, this was a while ago. He said that Play Art was almost entirely copycat stuff too. I might be wrong on that.
I do remember that, but I can't
remember the exact wording on it, but he said that a lot of the Play Art stuff was ripoffs of other diecast companies. So that's very interesting that if that was a original to them casting, that they would pick that too. Because I imagine that if that existed anywhere else from a larger brand, we'd know about it. Alex would know about it anyway.
Alex, educate some of us Americans, me first and foremost. What is the actual make? Where's that company, or where is that car from? Where did you guys grow up seeing them?
In real life, this the DAF itself is DAF are a Dutch car company, or they were a Dutch car company. They now make trucks. I think they were heavily involved with Volvo at some point in the 70s as well, because these cars pioneered. It was a really early form of CVT transmission. Used a lot of rubber bands, and it gave it quite a unique characteristic, which was that it could go as fast in reverse as it could going forward. So these things could hit 70 miles an hour in reverse. And there was, I think, some kind of charity race in Holland in the 1970s and early 80s where they would race these things in reverse. And there's some videos on YouTube. I urge you to go and watch them. They make me a bit motion sick, but they're there. Now, these cars, I think in the 70s and 60s and early 80s probably as well, you could probably still find these everywhere on the continent. They were very popular in Holland, Belgium, France. Personally, I haven't seen one yet. It's a goal of mine to see one of these things. But yeah, Play Arts themselves as well, the diecast brand, I don't think they were I think they'd gone by the time I was growing up as a child in the 90s. But they were something that I came into via a group on Facebook, and I think this was the first car of theirs that I saw, and I knew I needed it.
Is Amsterdam where they do the Red Bull, the crazy races where you build your own contraption
or whatever?
Yeah. Is that where that is?
Oh, yeah. I'm not too sure.
If so, it seems like that's in their DNA to have these wild forms of racing.
Yeah, so, definitely. Those videos
good on them.
Yeah. I think the transmission of that, like I say, I think that was something that Volvo took an interest in, and I think they signed a license building agreement at some point, possibly transmissions in return for designs. I know that there's a very weird Volvo DAF hybrid post van that the Swedish Post used in the 1970s that I've seen a few times.
Great choice.
Love it. What else we got?
So, next one that I can grab. This one, again, is an old European car, newer diecast. This is a car called a Melkus RS1000. Now, that is from a diecast brand called Grell, which I think it's a bit of a, it's not really accurate to describe Grell as a diecast brand. I think they were made by High Speed, these.
Yeah.
Grell were a marketing company in Germany, and in the early 2000s, as part of a promotion with some breweries which were in the former East Germany, they decided to replicate lots of former East German sports cars, saloon cars, motorcycles, lorries, as well as a few Soviet stuff like Moskoviches and Volgas. And this is one of the cars they chose to produce, which was, I think, probably East Germany's only real attempt at a sports car. So in real life, these things were based on a Wartburg family car with a tiny little three-cylinder two-stroke engine. They used a lot of bits from the Trabant, threw them together, and, worked their magic. Melkus himself was an East German racing driver. His sons still race in Germany. I think a couple of them, I think maybe he had two sons, but I know that a Melkus name was on the Nürburgring 24-hour entry list a fey times. So they're still out there. But yeah, they produced, I think, 100 of these in the, I can't remember the exact production date, sometime in the 70s. But yeah, they were for a child growing up in East Germany, that would be like the equivalent of seeing the Saturn V rocket going down the street. You couldn't buy these cars in real life without special permission from the DDR authorities to use it for racing purposes only. And I think they probably cost 10, 15 times what the average household would earn in a year.
Grell did everybody a favor putting out a lot of those Soviet era, East German, Russian stuff. What do you get when you look at that? I'm getting a little Lambo Mura front end on that.
Yeah.
It's the colour doesn't do it any justice, this is the colour that a lot of the Grell cars come in, because the breweries that they did deals with, this was their colours, the green, and most of the Grell cars come in a green colourway because it just ties in with the brewery. But there's a bit of Mura at the back. I don't know why they've chose to replicate the backlights like that, because in real life they have round rear lights. But this is it's got a bit of a Lamborghini look to it. They're very diminutive cars in real life. Very diminutive.
Get a little bit of Ferrari Dino in there too. Maybe
there's a lot of elements to it. Bit of Saab Sonne maybe.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Especially on the back deck is very Saab.
Yeah.
The rear window.
It's a gawky looking thing in real life, and it's quite a gawky looking diecast. It appears to be quite flat at the front and a bit oddly shaped, but they're awesome things. You can quite often find them these days in Germany still, hill climbs and classic rally. They tune very easily, those engines, surprisingly. Even though they were two-stroke tiny things, they can get well over sort of 100 brake horsepower from one of those, and they sound phenomenal. They really do.
Sure.
Well, I'm sure that some party member enjoyed, driving around with his mistress.
Yeah, I was going to say the ultimate bribe tool, I feel.
Yeah, you did, like I said, you did have to apply for special use. And I think, I did read somewhere that the average wait time of those was 1.5 years, but I think the average wait time for an average East German family at the time
It's about that long.
Trabant, for a Trabant or a Wartburg was maybe 5 years. So I think that puts it into perspective who was getting kind of the preferential treatment there.
Sure. All right. Fantastic. All right. What do we got next?
Right. I think we're into the boxed stuff now. This is all the loose stuff that's gone. So the next one I'm going to do is a car that a lot of Americans will be familiar with, probably a Yugo.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Butt of many jokes over here.
And in the UK, and in Europe, and in their home nation, I've got to say. But yeah, this is a Yugo, and I've still got the card for this. This is made by a Hungarian company called GMK Metalbox. Yeah. And I believe that they were responsible for some Matchbox copies at some point in their life. But the casting itself, it's based on a Yugoslav casting made by a company called Auro Metal, and they were producing toys, diecasts up until the Yugoslav war kicked in the early 90s, and that sort of brutal implosion of the country, it led to most of the factories that were usable being switched to, arms production or military vehicle production and stuff. So I think Auro Metal sold the production rights and all the tooling to GMK, who were a Hungarian company based in Budapest.
So is that a light bar on that?
This would have been the original Auro Metal car would have been the police militia car with the light bar on it. I think Metalbox took all the tooling, everything with it, and just decided to carry on making them with exactly the same stuff. The original one still had the metal bases like the Auro Metal cars. This one just has a plastic base, opening rear hatch, the light bar you can take off. But yeah, that's a really unique car. I think it's a friend of mine in Bosnia helped me get a hold of this. Very hard.
That's a find. Chuck, you got any Yugos in your collection? I do not have a Yugo.
I was just thinking about that. I feel like somebody did a Yugo at some point, but I might be thinking of the Matchbox Renault 5 that had the hatch, or the Lacar one that had the hatch.
A lot of those.
I'm pretty sure that's
Alex. Could that be the only Yugo in diecast in that size?
Yeah, I think I would be very confident in saying it is. I mean, this, like I said, the Auro Metal, the original version of this, and this copy, for want of a better word, they are the only Yugo in that size. I think they did them in different colours. There's black ones, silver ones without the light bar, but this one was supposed to be the police version. Like I said, a friend of mine in Bosnia helped me get a hold of this, and it's in fantastic condition.
Yeah, that's a magnificent
Maybe you got
piece.
it on the card too. That's
yeah. The UK Postal Service cracked the blister on it a little bit, but apart from that, it's mint.
Nice.
It's been on Lamley that as well, this thing.
Very cool.
I love it.
All right, what else we got?
I will roll on to this, which is, I'll take it out of the packaging. So that is an Osca, an MT4. This is a diecast made by a Japanese company called, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of this here, but Yao Modellini. They are a company they're still around, they're still going, but they are mainly 1/43 scale resin stuff. If you want a low volume resin concept car that that nobody even saw, they're the people to go to. They do some really wacky left field concept vehicles, Ari's, Lamborghinis, a few other things. But at some point, I think early 2000s, they did a set of 1/64th vehicles for Festa Miglia in Japan, which is I think it's just a get together of all the rich car owners in Japan. They bring out their most cherished cars, some of them very expensive. The real version of this car actually ended up in Japan. This is a one-off. It was built to race at Le Mans. It won the class there in the early 50s. And then the car went to various collectors throughout Italy and Europe, ended up in Japan in the late 90s. And when Yao Modellini decided that they would make this set, this was one of the cars they chose. There's a Alfa Romeo in it, the Disco Volante Coupe, there's a Bentley Blower, Lotus 11, and this thing. Oh, and a Bristol, AC Bristol.
That sounds like a set I would really be interested in. Have you checked? Is the scaling pretty
I think this is
spot on? Or
yeah. It's spot on 1/64.
And what do we know about an Oscar for us Americans? I don't know the car.
So that was, I think, the MT in Oscar MT4. I think the MT stands for Maserati. So they were part of the Maserati family, the brothers that founded that company. And the MT4, I think, was the base model, I guess, for want of a better phrase. And this is a Vignale bodied version that they took to Le Mans. But the MT4 was a race car for, I think, used a 1.5 litre engine. Very successful in Europe in the 50s and 60s. And I didn't know, I think I covered this on Lamley a few years ago, that until that article, that this vehicle in real life is a one-off. I didn't know that there wasn't any more of them, that this is the vehicle, the one that raced at Le Mans. So in real life, that resides in Japan, comes out for owners club meetings, etc., and yeah, they decided to replicate it. It's not exactly the most accurate thing, but when you get these cars up close, they're quite delicate, quite nicely replicated, and it's quite a good-looking diecast in my eyes. That.
What do you think? Is that early 2000s? When was it?
Early 2000s, definitely. Yeah. You can still find them occasionally on eBay. Take a bit of a trawl to find. It's normally the Bentley that comes up, because the other sort of 4 vehicles in the set were quite weird and wonderful, and people might, like me, they'd just lap them up. They were sold in blind boxes, like the Kyosho cars and things like that. They were sold like that, I think. So, but yeah, Yao Modellini still go, and high-end resin concept vehicles, that's their thing. But that was a break from the norm, this thing.
Super cool, man.
All right. Love it. It actually reminds me a little bit of there was a car built here in Florida called the Cunningham that I believe it raced in Le Mans. And Hot Wheels has actually made a Cunningham, which is crazy because now they built more than one of them, but they did not build very many of them. They were a car that was kind of a thing right before Carroll Shelby did the AC Cobra as the Cobra. Looked very similar to them, but they were built just a few hours drive from where I'm sitting right now in Florida. And I've actually gotten to see one in real life in Chicago at a rare auto show with the white and the blue. And I watched him scrape the tailpipe as he pulled out of the driveway. I was like, ooh. Oh, that is a very rare piece he just scraped on the ground. So anyway.
That's a feeling that you get from head to toe.
Oh, yeah.
Something
I
like
can
that
still
happens.
hear it in my head.
Yeah.
It's a trauma response. So
Hairs on the back of your neck.
yeah, exactly. All righty. What do we got next?
So I'll pop that back in its case and I will go to the next one. So this is something that I speak with. This collection, actually, me and David have been talking about this quite often. This is a car from the legendary Japanese cars collection that's David publisher, Hachette. I can't remember the name of the publisher.
Agostini.
So this is from their collection. This is a Renault Hino 4CV.
4CV.
So post-war, the Japanese car industry was non-existent, for want of a better phrase. It was crumbled. They were slowly getting back to life. The manufacturers that had been building aircraft and armaments and stuff were diverting their attention back to automobiles, bicycles, things like that. They needed money. They needed production expertise. They needed tooling, anything they could get, any help. So lots of the Japanese auto manufacturers were reaching out to European firms to try and get license-built production going. One of the companies that Hino reached out to was Renault, and they borrowed entirely the 4CV, the tooling of the Renault 4CV, and brought it to Japan. And it sold very successfully. I think it was one of Hino's first automobiles. It looks identical to a 4CV, and it is mechanically, but as time went on, more and more of the parts started to be produced in-house in Hino's factories, and by the time these ended production, they were quite unique compared to a European market 4CV. They had things that were adapted to the Japanese market and Japanese buyers. And I believe this casting, maybe last time I was on the podcast I mentioned it, where there was a Spanish part work that was, I think the Agostini were going to produce as well, or Hachette, or one of the other many brands out there. There was a Spanish part work that was trialed in a few towns and cities domestically in Spain a couple of years back, and that promised a array of 1/64 scale cars that had never been replicated before. Ford Orion. I think the first issue was the Seat Ibiza Mark 1. They did the Seat Ibiza Mark 1. Opel Kadett, Renault 11. Now, those castings were made by IXO, and have now, a few of them have reappeared. The Opel Kadett is now a BR Classics, a tarmac car. The magazine promised in future issues that there would be a Escort XR3, which now appears in BR Classics, and there was a Renault 4CV somewhere on that list as well, I'm sure of it. And I think the tooling of that ended up here, rebadged, repurposed, Japanese market Renault 4CV. So it's a pretty...
I was really surprised to see that show up in my batch that I ordered. Didn't expect to get a Renault in my legendary Japanese cars. Before we move to what do we got? 2 more, Alex?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's about seems about
well,
right.
hang on, because I want to call a timeout. I want to throw a quiz out now that we've done a legendary Japanese car. I want to see if anybody can recognize this beauty right here, because this one just came in my most recent batch of that series from De Agostini, and it's a wild one. It's almost like a Temu version of a Lotus Europa. This is a Japanese car.
Yeah.
And it's got
no. You're on the right track.
I was going to say it's got to be a Datsun.
It is. It was. This was under the new name.
So it's
a Nissan Cherry.
Cherry, yeah.
I'd never heard of this. Chuck, are you aware of this car? I love the fender mirrors.
I think I'm thinking of the Sunny and not the Cherry. And
that legendary Japanese car series is really cool, guys. 100 cars, and it's just, for Americans, it is stuff you've never ever seen, and that's why I love it. And that was one of the things Alex and I have been discussing recently. But enough of my marketing ploy for that series.
No, it's. I think it definitely needs talking about. I mean, we talk often about the Partworks thing and the way that these castings seem to reappear and just circulate. And I think IXO do most, if not all, of the manufacturing for these Partworks, and it's amazing to see where they're resurfacing. The Opel Kadett started off in this really obscure Partwork trialed in maybe a handful of Spanish cities and towns, and then it turns up as a tarmac, and then it turns up as a BR Classics and stuff. So, yeah, this is, I think, definitely part of that Spanish Partwork, and I'd love to see if anything else comes out of the woodwork in future. They must have the 3D models of these things still lying around, and very interesting.
A lot of these guys come out of Bangladesh, and I don't know enough about their GDP, but that has to be one of their top 3 exports, in my opinion, is their wonderful diecast cars.
Yeah, definitely. We're on to the last couple now. So the next one I'm going to go for is something that I think came from another Partwork, but it's not IXO related. This is from Welly, and it is from a Partwork that I can't remember where this appeared. But this is an FSO Syrena 105. It's a Polish microcar, kind of like their early version of a Trabant, I suppose. 2-stroke.
Lots of horsepower.
Yeah, very simple in construction. I think even the prototypes were some of them had wooden elements in it. I think that some of the prototypes had wooden elements in the roof and the structure. But that is the diecast version. It's not the most perfect example I've seen. It's a little bit too high. The headlights too small. It kind of looks more Austin Ambassador, which is a car very popular in India, than it does an FSO Syrena. But once you look at it closely, it's quite clear to see what it's supposed to be. But yeah, these were, I don't even think they were that popular in Poland. They were well known. They went on for, I think, a long production run. Welly chose to do, I think, the FSO Polonez Caro, the newer version, and the Polski 125P and 126P. It was kind of like their Polish range of cars. And I think I found this one quite possibly in Poland, a newsstand at a magazine. I can't remember whereabouts this one was, but such a unique vehicle. One I really didn't expect to see in this scale. It's definitely not 1/64th, I've got to say. It's probably nearer to 1/50th, definitely. Mm-hmm. Very big casting compared to the real thing, because the real things are tiny.
Welly is really good. I don't know their association with that company called Auto Grand, but to do a lot of the Ladas and a lot of the UAZ, the Russian cars, and not just the the more famous ones, but kind of those everyday daily driver ones too. I've enjoyed a lot of their castings. Great
Definitely.
choice.
Yeah,
Love
I
enough.
mean, the Auto Grand cars are something that I did consider bringing on here, but I gave myself a couple of criteria, and one of them was that it had to be something that probably no one would have heard of, and quite a lot of car enthusiasts have heard of Lada. Not many more about UAZ or Gaz, but I thought, no, this would be more fitting because it's just such a unique thing.
Fantastic choice. Yep.
Yeah, I'm proud I took it. It was a good one to again, it's been on Lamley, that one. And I really enjoyed doing some research about that thing. Yeah, great little thing. And the whole Polish series of that, I think Welly and Auto Grand are the same company, same conglomerate. So there's a Polish series, there's a Russian series. I don't know if there's any more, but yeah, there's some great models to look at there. And I think next one I'm going to go for.
Cue the drum roll.
Penultimate, or are we at the final?
We are at the final, I think.
Boy.
I think I've got 11 cars here, but this is the 10th. So I'm kind of cheating. This is 2 in 1. This is Hot Wheels.
Here you go.
The Zender Fact 4.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, I was telling Alex before, when I saw that on a card in a KB toy store, that was the future to me. Like, that was a glimpse into the future. And, like, that was a really cool car. Now, they had some pretty crappy paint jobs, as I recall. But what are your memories of the Zender Fact?
Actually, I always considered that a bad penny car for me. That was just always kept turning up everywhere I'd go. It was like that Christopher Cross album in thrift stores. Like, it was just always, you always found this vinyl album with the flamingo and the rainbow on it, and you're just like, yeah, there it is again. But yeah, and it's funny because for me, that one was, I didn't like that one nearly as much as I liked the Vector W8 was the one that I always thought was the future.
Hold it back up one more time, Alex.
So
did you get lensed headlamps on that? Do I recall that?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, there are.
There
are lensed headlamps.
Look at that.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I've been down with lensed lamps since I was 12.
So I have 2 of the colorways. These ones as well. One of them still has a Kmart price sticker on it from wherever it's come from.
How much was it?
This one was 89 cents.
That is,
whenever that was.
It is just stupid how Hot Wheels have defied inflation to this day.
Yeah.
And I decided to keep them carded just because of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Back of this one, if you can see that, this is the Hot Wheels stuff that you can send away for.
I had that stopwatch. I actually sent away the things and had the stopwatch, and I'm sure Mike Zarnock would have loved to have gone back in time and stolen that from me. I'm sure he has one. But yeah, like I wanted to get the jacket, but nobody could get enough points to get the jacket.
It doesn't say how many you need for the jacket. There's a jacket and compact TV and a bike as well.
Yeah. Can you imagine what it would have taken to get a compact TV, a Hot Wheels compact TV back then? Because it's funny, you know, now you can go into a store here and you can buy a TV, a 720p television for $69 I saw here, which is insanely low. But I remember like a portable TV, even like a little 13-inch TV being, you know, $700-800 in the 80s.
Out of reach. Yeah.
You know, but
so
yeah.
Alex, look on the back of that card. What year are those cards? Bottom left-hand corner, maybe?
1990, this one, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say like 1991.
That was so far ahead of its time.
And
so what do we know about the Zender?
1995 for this one.
Yeah, they ran that casting for a while. I think it was just I don't think it was a very good representation of the car itself. Like the real one is much less stocky. Like it has a very chunky look to it on the Hot Wheels car compared to the actual car. It looked way better.
I'll be very critical of this casting. It is pretty awful compared to the real vehicle. The real vehicle, like you say, is quite sleek. It has is a bit of an F40-esque look to it. And this is quite overinflated, especially at the back. It's too kind of high-sided, too high. The glass area is all wrong. But this, you're right in saying that it lasted a long time in the Hot Wheels lineup. I know the years that it was, that 91 to 2006, I think it lasted. And by the end of that line, the colours, like you said before, David, were just awful. There was some really bad colourways, some awful choices of design. But these two, the ones that I'm lucky enough to get, they've got the Zender logo, the Fact 4 thing on the side. The real vehicle itself, I think, was kind of like a technology demonstrator. Zender are a German tuning company who tuned a lot of Volkswagens, Audis, things like that, body kits, engine tuning, etc., etc. This was kind of a technology demonstrator in real life for what they were capable of. I think the real thing used an Audi V8 twin turbo, and it was a really capable thing. They built two, a coupe and a convertible, but I don't think any production ever followed up. That was it. That was the end of it. Don't know where the real things are to this day. But again, like some of the ones we've discussed, someone must have seen it at Hot Wheels and gone, hey, brilliant. That would make a really cool Hot Wheels.
Let's mess it up.
Yeah, let's ruin it. Yeah. And I picked these up, I think at a toy show here in the UK, actually. And before I picked these up, I hadn't even heard of Zender making their own vehicle before. So that sent me on a deep dive. And yeah, just the fact that in real life that only two of these things exist, one coupe, one spider, but yet they lasted for so long in the Hot Wheels lineup, it's just kind of strange to me.
All right. And that Larry Wood design, interestingly enough, I just looked it up.
Sorry, Larry.
So
they
sorry, Larry.
They can't all be winners, Larry.
No,
they can't all be winners. But I had a hunch because, no offense to Larry, but he has a style. Like, his cars have kind of a more boxy, beefy look to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think some of his cars of that era are brilliant. I think the Highway Patrol car that he did, that's not quite a Dodge Monaco, not quite a Ford LTD, is an iconic design. A lot of those Blackball eras, the Bywayman, even his like Royal Flash, which was his take on a Lotus Esprit, very, very boxy and angular. So you could feel kind of that DNA in there. And that's why I was like, I got to look this up because I have a feeling it was a Larry. But yeah, it's, an interesting take on it for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So they definitely,
the earlier ones are definitely the better ones. Definitely.
Yeah, the early on ones. And again, he had no control over what happened towards the end. But, if you think about that era of Hot Wheels too, like the late 90s, early 2000s, that was really kind of like, we're just going to throw every gaudy color we can think of at these things. We're going to go heavy
Metal
into the
plate,
extreme gold, and, wild stuff. I mean, it wasn't quite as nuts as what Matchbox was doing at the time, but it was pretty wild. We weren't doing it. There were some animal cars. Another thing Larry did, though, those crazy trucks and stuff that you push down and they'd get teeth and jaws would open and stuff. He was very into that sort of thing.
It's bringing back some memories of McDonald's Happy Meal Hot Wheels as well, and things like that here in the UK. And seeing a lot of the Corgi toys that we had in the UK repackaged as Hot Wheels as well. I think that
those are funny.
Yeah, the Highway Patrol car. I'm sure that is a rehashed Buick Regal from the Corgi range.
That is a different casting,
one.
But you're right. That was the actual Buick Regal casting. It is the same casting from the Corgi range because I have both castings, and it is a reworked version of that one for sure. And it's funny because that was one of those ones that they just like threw a thick paint job on it to cover up all the imperfections and stuff on it because it was not great.
Lines.
You raised panel lines instead of recessed panel lines, exactly. And they also had that custom van that was a Corgi, I think, as well. It was not quite a Dodge van. It kind of had like these little bump out things on the side of it and like a roof rack and a ladder on the back of it. That one what's fun about that one is that was done as a Chuck E. Cheese casting. Like they did a run of cars for Chuck E. Cheese. And so they got the van and it's purple and I think it has flames on it. I have a few of them because my name's Chuck and I got called that all the time growing up. So as a way of reacting to that, I've got there was an 80s Corvette they did the custom van. There's been a few different ones. They've even done like that weird off-brand Dodge Charger thing that was very popular in the 80s that it said Charger America on it in a lot of different ways, and then they'd have like an American flag on the roof to be a takeoff on the Dukes of Hazzard.
BMW
That was-
850 as well, I think.
Yeah,
Jaguar XJ, I think, was another one. I remember from when I was
I
little.
believe so. Yeah, yeah,
And that was ugly as a Hot Wheels.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
ugly.
Yeah. There was a Porsche 911 that Hot Wheels did that was
Yes.
definitely not one of theirs too. But yeah, the Mercedes wagon was definitely one. Yeah. There were quite a few that, the Mustang, right? With the opening hatch on the back. That was not an original Hot Wheels, but it was released as a Hot Wheels. I don't know if that was a Corgi or not, but it was definitely not a Hot Wheels car.
I think it probably would. I think somewhere in my garage I've got the Corgi version of that. Somewhere.
Yeah, I've got the Corgi and the Hot Wheels version, and like the Corgi version I have has like a baseball team logo on it, and it's got yellow glass or something. But and it was funny because they, like, in order to have the hatch so it would open, they put I think it was just to keep costs down, but it has no window in the back hatch, so
Right.
you use your
Kind of
finger
like
to
the car. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but yeah, it's kind of funny how these castings can have a life all their own beyond their original brand. So
Yeah,
very
that's-
cool.
I mean,
All right.
This era of Hot Wheels, this is the era I remember collecting.
Sure.
The Zender Fact 4 was probably one that missed me as a child. I think the first Hot Wheels I had, you mentioned the awful metal flake paint that they were doing. I had the Fiero, the bright green Fiero that they did.
Yep.
And I adored that car. I have no idea why.
Yeah.
But
It was a good track car. It was heavy. It was
Yes.
it was very fast, and it was very low, and it was very heavy. So it was a great track car, and it had a narrow wheelbase too, which made it good for the loops. But yeah, I had the red, white, and blue version of it, and the neon green version that you're talking about, that bright yellowy green. But yeah, I liked the version that it, had the stars and stripes on the hood, and then it had like stars and stripes thing on the side. Very American. But I thought, no, those cars, when I saw them, I thought those were the future. And then I found out they caught on fire a lot. But a very appropriate name for a car called the
Have you guys
Fiero.
ever seen this? What about this? This is
But yeah,
This
that's
is my-
the Firebird concept, right?
it is the Firebird. This is my favorite obscure car in diecast. This was a gift from my buddy Rel. We all know as the Quirky Garage on YouTube.
That's
He's in France. This is a Norev casting, the very first, I believe, jet propelled automobile, 1954. I mean, is there anything more American than throwing a jet engine on a vehicle? Thank you, Quirky Garage, for that.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant. Who makes that diecast? That's Nora, you say?
That's Norev. So, shout out to Norev, giving us cool stuff.
I didn't realize we were going to have homework. Sheesh.
Dig deep, Chuck. What's
what's
your
that
weirdest one?
I will say Ertl has some interesting ones from the 80s that in 1/64 scale. They did like the 84 Dodge Charger, which was a very weird car to have done. Hot Wheels did the Omni, but I think the only people that do the Dodge Charger, well, Matchbox did the Charger Daytona, which was the later version, like the 87 version, but that version, the previous generation version of that one that I really like is that 84 Dodge Charger. And I'll see if I can find that. That one's probably still in storage somewhere. That's one that I really dig as far as being obscure. The Fresh Cherries line of Motomax
Absolutely.
comes to
Fantastic.
mind.
Yeah.
They did the other
Pinto.
Omni, the 4-door Omni. They did the Pinto. They did the Vega. That one's an unusual one to show up. It's showed up. There's been a Hot Wheels version of it, but it was like a wide-bodied, customized version. But to do like our 4-door Reliant, and they were the first ones to really do like the Dodge Diplomat, and like these very boring cars of the 70s and 80s that
Bring 'em
nobody
on.
was.
Bring 'em
yeah,
on.
exactly.
The Malaise
exactly.
era, isn't it? It's
The
There you
Malaise
go.
era, yeah. They did the 70s Ford Thunderbird way before Greenlight did it, and those ones really stood out to me as interesting and obscure in that it was like, who picked this one? And there's been a few of those like that, but off the top of my head, that's a good question. Trying to think of what I have in my main display case that would be unusual. I mean, I love that Greenlight did things like the they've done some RVs like the Bounder and the Winnebago, and I know they did them so they could do the Walking Dead Winnebago and they could do the Breaking Bad Bounder and the Condor 2 from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I think those were really cool. It's not a lot of people doing RVs, especially doing them in true 1/64 scale like Greenlight did.
Right.
So those are the ones that really kind of stand out to me as being kind of unique and interesting. So, and of course our buddy Lou doing the Chevy Astro before Tamika did, and some of those more obscure cars that he was working with when he was doing the City line and couldn't get licensing from the fancy cars. So they were like, okay, you can do the 4-door S10 and you can do the Cadillac Escalade and you can do the Chrysler 300. I think he got to do the Lincoln Town Car was another one he did that not a lot of people have done.
Who did was it the Mercury version of the Ford? I'm going to butcher this now.
The Grand Marquis?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, somebody did do that. I actually had somebody in a store the other day tell me nobody did Mercury Grand Marquis in 1/64 scale, and I was like, actually, they did.
Au contraire.
Yeah.
That was a great...
Yeah, there was a Mercury Marauder that somebody did in 1/64 scale. Who was it? Greenlight did a Marauder? Okay, that must have been a
that sounds
ago.
Familiar to me.
But Greenlight has also done the Grand Marquis wagon.
Oh, GOC did their Grand Marquis. Yeah, I've got that actually.
Did they do the Grand Marquis?
No, they've done a Crown Vic.
Yeah.
1991 Crown Vic.
Who did the Grand Marquis? Somebody did a Grand Marquis. But
I remember looking at it and thinking, hey, that's a Ford Crown Vic, and then no, hang on, no, it's not. It's and I asked my friend, I think Brian from Lamley, and I said, who makes this and where did you get it from? Yeah, quite a unique casting for me, that definitely.
Yeah. I knew that Greenlight did the wagon, and the Marauder was basically a Grand Marquis that had been souped up. We're drifting into bad radio land over here, so we need to wrap this up. But thank you, Alex. That's a really great start. I want to keep this series going because I like you said, there's going to be, hundreds of these weird obscure cars, and I'll do my homework next time. I promise. I'll bring one of my own to show off. But that was
great.
That was a great one, David. Great pull there in the. I believe that was like the Thunderbird 1. They did like three or no, not Thunderbird, 4. Firebird 1. They did like 3 or 4 different Firebird. Yeah, and they just got wackier each time. Like one had like 4 fins on the back of it, and it was wild. So, but that is awesome. Again, Alex, tell folks where they can find you, follow you, because it's all over the place now.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier when you asked what I've been up to. Do small YouTube videos now, shorts, so you can find me on YouTube, Alex the Hoarder, Instagram, Alex the Hoarder, and Facebook as well.
Very cool. And of course, check out Lamley and Diecast Collector Magazine, where you will find the yarns spun by our friend Alex about your favorite tiny diecast cars. And of course, thank you for making it to the end of yet another episode of Diecast Breakdown. If you're done here, you can jump over to Twice Diecast. David's still posting stuff over there too. Come on by. And of course, make sure you're liking, subscribing, following. We got Pia posting some great photos over here. Our community posts have been really popular lately. I'm really appreciative of him for that. And of course, our co-host, Mark, who joins us when he can, and he contributes a lot of great stuff. He gives us great interviews and connects us with people and keeps those relationships going as I'm, over here trying to just get the show episodes edited and out on time. So shout out to him. He'll be back in a future episode. And of course, thanks to our patrons again that make the show go. If you want to join their ranks, you can visit diecastbreakdown.com and you can check out our merch store. Nobody on the episode is wearing merch today because this is a weird time for us to do the recording and I was not ready to put on my t-shirt. But you can check out the designs by my brother Justin. They are fantastic, and he keeps coming out with new great ones. So make sure you keep popping back and looking at those community posts because we post the new designs as they come out. And as always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time. Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.